Well, thank you so much for joining us. We are just started a new series. This is actually the second video, if you count the live stream that is from Sunday. And the series is called Thriving in Community, and it's really about what is and how to grow a healthy and thriving community. And we definitely want to just sort of say we are not coming here as experts. We are coming here of what we're learning along the way.
Yeah.
And what we're reading from people who I think might be somewhat of experts. They've been doing this for a while and they've done a lot of research.
And I think from our perspective, typically in church that people would call this discipleship.
Yeah.
And we've chosen not to call this series 4 steps to discipleship or something like that. Just because of the research and the training that we have been working through, because it presents some different ideas on discipleship, and I think thriving community is a better way to describe it from what we've been learning, and we'll get to that point as we go through the podcast today.
Yeah, I think it might be really helpful just to set this up, and we can maybe put a link in the description to a little video that we have that sort of gives us sort of the introduction to what all of this is and what we'll be talking about over the next couple months and even into the new year. That'll again kind of set everything. So even if you're watching this video right now, you can go and check that link out, then come back.
Yeah.
But so we're going to jump into here. We are drawing kind of off the books and research by Dr. Jim Wilder of Life Model Works. One of the main books we will be referencing is called The Other Half of Church, that he wrote with Michael Hendricks. Now there are many other books kind of like connected to Jim Wilder, whether they're other ones from him or individuals that who have trained with and under him. Again, kind of connected to Life Model Works. And so we'll be definitely referencing a lot of those books, but we've also had the pleasure of having some formal training under Michael Sullivan of Life Model Works, who is a presenter and one of the trainers there. And so we'll be able to even share a little bit from our own experiences in kind of understanding and growing it ourselves into wanting to be able to be a part of a healthy and thriving community.
So in the other half of church, sort of to set the tone for what we'll be talking about today, they use a metaphor of healthy soil. I think Michael Hendricks talks about when he moved into his first house, he wanted to grow some tomatoes, and he planted some tomato plants. And the first year he got a great crop, and the next year he got a good crop, and the year after it seemed to go down and down and down and down to the point where in one season he barely got a handful of tomatoes. And when he asked someone, an expert, what was wrong, they said that tomatoes were the kind of plants that take a lot of nutrients out of the soil. And so then the soil had become depleted, and they were no longer able to produce tomatoes. So they would produce plants, but not tomatoes. And so he learned what kind of nutrients to put back into the soil, and then the tomatoes were able to flourish and produce a good harvest again. So he's taking that into using it sort of like a spiritual metaphor for how what kind of ingredients or nutrients make up the soil that is necessary for growing a healthy community.
Yeah, and so those 4 ingredients that are there are joy, love, group identity, and healthy correction. And we are going to go through each of those.
You bet.
But right now, in this kind of next month and a bit, we are focusing on nutrient number 1. And just so we know that there is a reason to even the order.
Yeah.
It's not just sort of, hey, any order, especially because, quite often I think when we hear that healthy correction, I think, at least in my experience, especially in the world of church, that seems to be like, well, let's figure that out.
Yeah.
And truthfully, and they talk about this in some of the books, they talk about it in our training, the other 3 things need to be established.
First.
Those are, joy and love are really important. Then you come to group identity, and only after you've gotten some good establishment of that do you get to healthy correction. So that's why we're going to talk about joy. And in this video, we're actually going to talk about myths of joy. Past Sunday, Ron shared about kind of what joy is, or at least what we mean when we say joy, so how we're kind of defining it. So before we get into the myths, why don't you just sort of give us that really brief
Sure.
kind of overview from that.
Yeah. So what we talked about last Sunday was how we're going to define joy when it comes to this particular series and how they define it in the book. And one of the key things about understanding joy is that joy is relational. And that was kind of not news to me, but it was a new idea for me, because we often talk about joy, but most people can't understand the difference between joy and happiness.
Yeah.
And happiness is very circumstantial. The circumstances came together and that produced some happy thought or memory for me, where joy is always relational. And the way they explain it in the book is it's one of the first things that we as humans learn to do.
Yeah.
We look at our mother's face, our mother or parents smile at us, and that produces a feeling inside of us that makes us want to smile back. So it isn't just mimicry. It actually does produce a feeling in a person, and every other time after that, and this is something we sort of start learning in our families, but as we get older, we develop friendships, and joy is that feeling you get when you walk into a room, see someone you recognize, and when that person recognizes that you're there, and they show a visible sign of happiness that you're there, and that produces joy in you. And so the definition that is in one of the books that we're talking about. This one is called Joy Starts Here, and it was written by Chris Corsi along with Jim Wilder, and they define joy this way. Joy is the twinkle in someone's eyes, the smiling from deep inside, the gladness that makes lovers run toward each other, the smile of a baby, the feeling of sheer delight that grows stronger as people who love each other lock eyes, what God feels when he makes his face shine over us, and the leap in our hearts when we hear the voice of someone we have been missing for a long time. Joy is a high energy emotion related to knowing that someone is happy to see me. So that's a bit of a, I wouldn't say vague, but it's a very sort of long definition.
Yeah.
But you get from all of the examples they're giving in the definition that joy is extremely relational.
Yeah.
And it's really their last statement sums it up. It's a high energy emotion related to knowing that someone is happy to see me. And part of Jim Wilder's initial research, now he calls himself, I believe, a neurotheologian.
That's correct, yes.
So he was originally a neuroscientist, and he was also a follower of Jesus. And he came across some research by a man named Dr. Alan Shore from about 20 years ago. And he was the one who actually determined that joy was sort of the fuel for the brain, and that we were meant to thrive and run on joy. And so,
and that it was relational as well.
And that it was relational, yeah. So, and that came from the ability to actually monitor the brain in real time on a living person. And that's only something that we've been able to do for the last couple of decades. So that led to a whole pile of research. And then Jim looked at that research and found it had a lot of correlation to the Bible. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, maybe there's something here in that if this is, I said this in the message, that if science can prove something, that's probably then the way that God designed it to be. Yeah, it could be. And he was seeing those correlations in the research from that scientist to what he was learning or had learned from the Bible. So again, we're going to jump right now into the myths, and sometimes it's easier to understand something when you know what it's not. So again, let's jump into there.
Yes, we'll jump into that too, and I think this is really important for me because there are false beliefs. I know I've had them.
Yep, me too.
And still got to remind myself of them and get easily caught up in that.
Yeah.
At the start of the journey, I really became aware that I can be pretty low joy, and so I believe these at different times. So let's do this.
So what's myth number one?
Myth number one. Here we go. Joy is a choice.
Now, Christians really like this one.
Yeah.
Joy, you have to choose joy.
That's right.
Choose joy. You can be
simple
joyful.
as that.
You can overcome anything by choosing joy. So this one is huge in my mind.
Yep.
But maybe I don't know. Sometimes it feels like splitting hairs.
It does, and that's the way when I was looking at this the first time I read it. It's splitting hairs, but it really did make a difference in how I looked at it.
Yeah.
So Marcus Warner and Chris Corsi, in their book 4 Habits of Joy-Filled People, basically said there are choices that we make that can increase the odds of feeling joy. So it's not just a simple choice. It's choices we make that again, doesn't guarantee it increases the odds of it. So it's not just saying or declaring, I'm going to be joyful today.
Yeah.
It's actually putting some exercises and practices, choices that we can do daily, such as expressing gratitude, things like that we, and we'll share some of those later on in some further videos on what that is, that can be helpful, but it's not just this simple choice.
Or choosing to be with somebody or with a group of people. If joy is relational.
Those are some of the other exercises.
If joy is relational. Now, again, I really like some of the exercises because we aren't always able to be with people.
Yeah.
And that's where the exercises come in to help us understand or how to build our capacity for joy. And some of those are, like you said, taking time to express gratitude and things like that help us sort of either expand our capacity for joy or help us to come back to joy when we were experiencing other emotions.
Yeah. So again, not a choice, but we can make choices that help us move towards joy.
Correct.
They Marcus Warner and Chris Corsi say joy predominantly happens in the relational right hemisphere of the brain, with choices and cognition that happen in the left.
Mm-hmm.
And so joy is primarily a relational experience. Therefore, that's happening on that right side. And so then when we are able to start building the capacity for joy, joy becomes more of a reflex anchored in the relational part of our brain that does actually affect the left side.
Mm-hmm. And that's important to note. In the book, they explain that the left side of your brain works slower than the right side of your brain.
That's right, yeah.
And so when we say that it's a reflex, that's because the right side of your brain will automatically respond to someone, like seeing someone's face and knowing that they're happy to see you, and create that emotion in you before the left side of your brain can even think to make a choice to do that.
Right. Yeah, and so it is about choosing to, things you can do, like choosing to dwell on memories that have relational joy.
Mm-hmm.
A big part for me is writing some of those memories down.
Yep.
So you can go back and even look at those to help yourself remember that. Also, a big part is just being able to share that memory.
Yeah.
So not only are you sharing relational joy, you are in relationship sharing that memory with someone.
Yeah, it's a way to amplify joy.
Absolutely. A big thing is also remembering things to appreciate even in difficult times. And I'm not going to say that it's easy. It's not. But just something that I've kind of learned to do is that, a little over about a year and a half ago, we went on a family vacation, still in the midst of, some travel restrictions due to COVID. We were in Florida. We were going to Disney World. My son got COVID. So that meant he couldn't get on the plane when we were scheduled to go. And obviously that really put a damper on a lot of the family side of the vacation. And it really impacted me because I was really put up probably a little too much into what this vacation would be.
Yeah.
And so I was really down, and obviously some of the things that were really helpful, even though, I was just there with, at some point my wife and my daughter, they took the regular scheduled flight, dealing with the stress of what, shambles of the vacation and having to, make the best of vacation for my daughter. And then having to stay there with my son. And then with that fear and stress of like, what if I get COVID and we got to wait longer?
Yeah.
All of that sort of stuff. We talked a couple times there.
We sure did.
Which again was helpful.
Yeah.
There's like, to be able to bring people into that. But even appreciating time, I really even the moment a little bit for sure, and even more so after, appreciate the time I've had with my son Joseph. That we, being there an extra week, and we were kind of confined for a portion of it because he had to be in kind of a room in the hotel, and but just we had some really good bonding and connecting time, and I look back now, even though I still kind of can feel a little down from I really value some of that just time we had and conversations we had and time together.
I think that's important to note here is that when we talk about joy, it doesn't mean we don't experience other emotions like sadness or grief or fear. Those things are real. There's no denying that their realities, and we
Yep.
just can't choose our way out of it. Joy doesn't remove negative experiences from our life, but it helps them process them in a healthy way.
Yeah, that's probably dispelling another myth in the midst that joy doesn't remove negative
Yes,
experiences.
yeah.
So it actually gives us strength to endure.
Through them, yeah.
When we read Philippians 4:8, Paul's writing this, from now on, brothers and sisters, if anything is excellent, if anything is admirable, focus your thoughts on these things. All that is true, all that is holy, all that is just, all that is pure, all that is lovely, all that is worthy of praise. And I really do think that this is Paul encouraging people to joy.
Yeah.
Not denying the realities of going on there, but to have that connection with joy and do it together.
And it comes from your brain. He's
does.
telling you to think on it, and that you can choose what to think. So, like you say, it is maybe splitting hairs a little bit about the choice thing, but it isn't just mind over matter kind of thing.
Yeah. And I want to just, as we talk about this, it could be like, oh, this is easy. I'm not going to tell you, it's not easy.
No.
It takes time to build these practices in your life and to see some of the fruit, and it's backwards and forwards and all that sort
and
of stuff.
honestly, I've come to, when we first started this, I thought it was great, and I got a lot out of it, and I was able to increase my joy actually quite a bit. And then some days, though, when things aren't going quite so right, I sit down to look at those lists, and it feels like work to go through them. But after going through them, sometimes I feel a little better. Sometimes I feel a lot better. So sometimes I don't feel any better.
Yeah,
but overall, I would say the idea of there's a process where that just going through the motions of that does eventually help me come back to joy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
myth number 2.
All right. Some people are just born joyful.
I've known some people like that. They just seem happy no matter what's going on.
Yeah. And just born that way.
Yeah.
Like the idea of like, oh, it's just natural.
Yeah. And that I wasn't born that way, so there's no way I can be
Exactly.
joyful. Yeah.
Now, I do want to say there is evidence that things, like genetics and heredity can absolutely play a role. So we don't want to dismiss that, but the thing is, it's not a guarantee. Mm-hmm. It's not as cut and dry as that.
Yeah. And another thing that I've run into is some people think of joy as a spiritual gift. So once I become a follower of Jesus, I will always be joyful. And that everything's going to go my way, and Jesus is going to straighten out every path. And that's going to make my life so much easier for me that I won't ever have to experience any other emotion but joy. And that's not true either. Yeah. I think the biggest thing that sort of I took away from this training is that the capacity for joy can be developed and expanded, and your environment plays a huge role in it.
Huge. And that's where we, again, dispel the myth that some people are born this way. It's the idea of like possibly those people maybe had an environment.
Yeah.
Because joy develops and grows is greatly influenced by relational activity. Because one of the things that we've learned in our reading and in the training too is witnessing the good skills.
Yeah.
So not just the sort of having, here's good skill number one, here's good, like kind of prepare to it like that we too often do. Mm-hmm. And that's that left hemisphere kind of thing. The right hemisphere, just being able to see people do it.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily have like what they are doing down, just you're witnessing good skills on what it is to return to joy from a negative and upsetting situations. And that plays one of the biggest roles.
Yeah. And there's the idea that these skills are more caught than taught. We can learn about them and understand them, but until we see somebody else do it and experience it for ourselves. So we think of the mentor kind of a relationship, or being in an environment where other people have worked through that process and are teaching it to you by experience.
Yeah. And, or, as having, parents that will hopefully teach some of these skills, they may not be so much, again, giving that play by play, but just we grow up watching that, we go, and we start to see it, and it becomes more of a natural part of life because we've witnessed those things. And so
we've all experienced the opposite too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing we have to say. Some, when it comes to this, we have to understand that some environments can severely lack the demonstration of these skills because there is trauma.
Yeah,
and it's a real thing.
Could it be the family you grew up in, or a job you had, or
Absolutely.
those kinds of things? Yeah.
Bad things occurred, hurtful things occurred. And so that absolutely can be a big deal. And I think probably many environments, truthfully, are probably hit or miss with these skills. There's an absence of some of these skills, like the idea of like you can be living in a family or a community that we're, say, returning from joy, or coming to that relational nature from certain strong emotions like anger are done well, but maybe not so much from shame. And so you've learned that skill in one aspect, but not necessarily
in another one. Yeah. Yeah. And I think another sort of myth that goes along here is that maybe it's too late for me to grow my capacity for joy.
Yeah, I think that comes with that. Like the idea that if it's that people are just born into it, therefore maybe I can't have it. Or like, no, we can. It's not too late.
Everybody can learn to develop and expand their capacity for joy.
Yeah. It will take work.
Yep.
It might take some healings from traumas, but what's kind of cool that, in our readings with this, I think, is that as we grow in this, our joy, as we heal, our joy capacity has the potential to grow. But as it grows, it actually can aid us in our healing. So
it's like a feedback loop.
Yeah, it's just kind of both happening there.
That helps the other one, helps the other. Yeah.
But we do sometimes we'll take some healings from traumas because unfortunately I know some of us have had some rough things that should have never happened.
Exactly. Okay, on to myth number 3.
All right, joy-filled people have fewer problems than low joy people.
And that might seem to be the case for some people because they seem happier. So we automatically assume that, hey, they're not going through, or they've never experienced the hard things that I've experienced. So that's why they can be so joyful.
Yeah. Again, the joy is not the elimination of problems and hard times. And I think in our culture, we put a big focus on that.
Yeah.
Like, can we eliminate all that? And I think it's a good thing. Absolutely. We'd like to see people suffering a lot less.
Yeah.
All that sort of stuff. But joy is really kind of gives us strength and resilience. So there's actually a lot of evidence that some of the most joyful people are actually those who live and have gone through some hardship.
They've suffered a lot.
And suffering. We can kind of add maybe even another myth in the midst of this, and that is money, health, and influence is kind of the key to joy. But I don't think it takes us long to realize that's not necessarily true.
Because a lot of those things are circumstantial.
Yeah.
So in a particular moment, we can experience happiness, but it doesn't lead to the long-term joy.
Well, and I think what happens when we, money, health, influence, those things that a lot of us really want. I mean, I'm not going to deny just like
not tonight. Yeah.
Those things. All of those things, you can still be lonely. And if it's if joy is this relational thing, you can have all those things. You can have as much of those things better than anyone in the world. You could still be lonely.
Yep.
And that's really the key is. Daniel M. Hayburn, he kind of writes that money and wealth can open up so much more options than if you don't have it. However, research shows that it is far from a guarantee from growing joy or even happiness.
Yeah.
The key is that for those who are growing joy are really tight-knit communities that go through everything together.
Yeah.
It's not that they have fewer problems. It's about they have people there going through it
with them,
with us.
So someone's got your back.
Yeah.
Or at least it's going to support you through.
That's right. It's you're not going through anything alone.
And that's what real church community should be.
That's where it is. And that's why Romans 12:15, Paul writes this, be happy with those who are happy and cry with those who are crying. It's be in the good and the bad, in the highs and the lows, be with each other. Be happy with each other. Be happy to be with each other in the highs, but especially when we're going through those low moments, when there are people who are happy to be with us, even though it's not a happy moment, it can be such a huge part. And then we can remind each other as we are with each other that Jesus is also happy to be with us.
Yeah.
Chris Warner and Marcus Warner and Chris Corsi write, in the end, it is the relational joy that provides the foundation for life rather than hardship.
So if you have to experience it alone, it can be crushing.
Yes.
But again, the minute you show up to support me, I get a little spark of joy.
Yeah.
and then that helps me get through whatever I'm going through.
Well, one of the things they actually said, like where they how they've defined sort of suffering and drama, trauma. It's just sort of like we're all going to suffer. When we go through the thing alone, it can lead to trauma.
Yeah.
If we go through it together, it's still going to be suffering.
Yep.
But it won't necessarily get to trauma.
The trauma. Yeah.
So over the next several weeks, we are going to share, again, a little bit of what we've learning and practicing in order to grow and develop our joy. That's kind of the point of this. We're hoping that in our community at Connections, we are going to grow in this. We want to grow in this ourselves. Like I said at the beginning, we are far from experts.
Yep.
We are learning along the way. We are coming to our own realizations of whether we are high or low joy people and areas of we need in growth, and we see that happening, and definitely a long way to go and a long way we've come from. So we hope that you would like to join us in that. Those of us who are currently in our community, and also those who maybe not right now in our community, we invite you to come and learn to grow in joy together in this journey of really becoming a thriving community.
Yeah. So thanks very much again for this first part of the journey with us, and we invite you to come along and, like Jay said, to keep listening or watching these podcasts, and you can watch our live streams on the other channel where we talk. We're sort of working through the whole process with both venues. And again, if you like this content, please like and subscribe to our channel. It does help. And as always, we encourage you to think about it, talk about it with somebody. Maybe the thing we can talk about this time is maybe there are some other myths or additional myths of joy that are different than the way we've defined joy here, or the way they define the joy from the Life Model Works. And if this is kind of a new idea to you and you've got some other ideas about joy, that's a good thing to talk with someone about, or leave a comment in the comment section here, and we'd be happy to check in with you about that as well. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.